At eRoad, we believe fleet management doesn't have to be problematic. It should be effortless, connected, and future-ready for your heavy-duty operation. With a reliable, accurate technology solution, you can elevate your fleet's performance, improve productivity across your business, monitor events as they happen, and reduce costs and downtime. Get on the road to better fleet management and safer, more productive operations. Go beyond the basics and visit eroad.com today.
Hey, welcome back. It's Loaded and Rolling. I'm Thomas Wasson, and the topic for today is going to be cybersecurity. I talk a lot about trucks, but trucks are getting more complicated, and as they get more complicated, so come the risks of having cybersecurity issues, whether it be your back office, your front office, or even behind the wheel. So I'm going to be talking to some folks today from the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. You may know them as the NMFTA. Joe Ohr, the Chief Operating Officer there, is going to be joining us. Joe, pleasure to have you on. It's one of those things that you don't really think about till you need it or something happens. Tell us first about yourself and the NMFTA.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. So NMFTA is National Motor Freight Traffic Association, and what we do is we provide standards and best practices within supply chain. And so we focus, one of our major focuses not only is SCAC and classification, but we also focus on creating standards and best practices within cybersecurity. And so we don't focus just on LTL, but we focus on cybersecurity throughout supply chain, including the trucking industry. And so we're focused on everybody from owner operators to 0 to 10 truck fleets to enterprise. And so really trying to get out there, get the message across. And so looking at how to secure back office and assets. So a little bit about myself, been in the IT industry, but also the trucking industry for the last 25 years. Worked in the telematics space. Worked for several different companies. So just been around the space for 25 years and really enjoy it.
And I think, given your experiences in the space, there's been a lot of change. And I think this is a real timely topic to talk about because we're hearing more about fraud, cases of bad actors, folks trying to take advantage of carriers. You all do some research, cybersecurity research. Tell us a little bit about what some things y'all have been working on, or what are some of these big themes that maybe when you first started out you didn't hear about, but now we suddenly need to put top of mind.
Okay, yeah, one of the things we didn't hear about a lot in the past that I think is top of mind is cargo theft. Cargo theft is one of the things that you would hear about occasionally, but it was cargo theft where it wasn't related to cybersecurity, and so we call cargo theft sort of the cousin of cybersecurity, because they're using the positions of the asset to be able to do the cargo theft. They're looking at what's inside the container because of cybersecurity breaches to determine what to target within the cargo theft. So it's all related. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about is, we do a lot of research on the asset side. And so one of the things we always say is, the truck itself and the trailer. And so, 20 years ago when telematics first was coming out, the truck didn't have a lot of connection points, and definitely not a lot of wireless connection points. And so the truck wasn't a target. Now the truck itself has a lot of wireless connection points. It's sending, collecting and sending gigs worth of data to the cloud. So that people can analyze it. You look at the health of the truck. And then the trailer itself, we're starting to see an evolution of data come from the trailer itself. So a lot of the things that we do is partner with the universities, academia to try to understand, where could the next attack come from? And then we also look at things within the supply chain with the ports, and we've got a webinar coming up next week, in fact, where we really focus on the ports and what's coming up there with the Chinese cranes.
And I think that's fascinating. I went to a conference recently by a large telematics provider, and they were highlighting that was their goal: interconnectivity. They wanted a mesh network. They wanted all these devices to ping off each other. But if I want to steal a truck, I'm assuming it's like phishing. Is there ever a concern I can set up some things and try to pick off the airwaves? Or is the phishing more like I'm going to send you an email, it spoofs it, I give you my login, and I just go in kind of through social aspect of phishing? What's the kind of biggest thing right now in terms of what do I need to be worried about?
I think right now there's two. The first one that you talked about, sort of more of a man in the middle attack, and the thing that we worry about is a lot of the drivers, they go up, whether it be a truck stop or anything else. They go and they connect to an open Wi-Fi, and somebody can be in between that open Wi-Fi and whatever they're connecting to. And early on, a lot of the telematics providers and a lot of the carriers weren't that concerned about that. But we're seeing more and more be worried about that. And then I think the second part that you mentioned is really where we're starting to see a lot of the training be focused on. It's those phishing emails. And part of that's related to AI. It's not like the old days where it took a lot of effort. You can really, with AI, sit there and send thousands of emails almost instantaneously. And it used to be you could look at an email and say, oh, it came from a foreign bad actor. It came from a nation state. Look at the language. It's kind of broken. You can kind of tell it's coming from somewhere else. But now with AI, you really can't tell the difference. And so they go and they send those out, and it's almost like a company that's being run. A nation state will recruit people from college, and it's run like a business. And they'll say, okay, whoever you get to click on their email, and we get into their network, we'll look at how much money they're making, and we'll go get a certain percent of that profit. And so whether it's a small trucking company or a big trucking company, they'll still target them. So, that's why one of the things that we're doing is coming up with best practices and training. It's all about training.
And I want to circle back to that first point. We had a little bit of a connection delay. You said that unsecured Wi-Fi networks, where if I'm a driver, I finally parked for the night, I log in, I may not be logging into the right network. If it's open, someone could be in between and just kind of sifting through it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a man in the middle attack. And so, somebody could be in the middle stealing that data. So you really want to make sure that if you are connected to an open Wi-Fi, and you're on a device, that the company is using either a VPN or they're going through some sort of proxy server, so that data is encrypted or protected.
And that's one of the things I had to get trainings back in the day as a dispatcher, not clicking suspicious looking emails. Nation states are getting a lot better. What are some of the training aspects? What for folks who have, especially the average age of drivers, the average age of office staff in trucking, we're used to this old, they still refer to them as Qualcomms for some of the units. What are some of the steps that you need to take to try and inoculate yourself from these risks?
So, one of the things is know what you're connecting to. A lot of times it will look like it's legitimate, and the Wi-Fi looks like it's something that should be something secure, but it's not. So always know what you're connecting to. If you can connect to your personal hotspot, connect to your personal hotspot. The other thing is, if it seems too good to be true, when you get an email, it probably is. We always recommend that you hover over the email and look to see what it's hyperlinked to, and it'll show you in a pop-up what it's going to. Look at who it's coming from. Did you expect the email? If it's asking you to enter credentials, check it. Don't just blindly enter your credentials. Also, if it's ever asking for financial information, let's say it's credit card, bank information, call the number on the back of your credit card. Don't just blindly enter that information. Be super cautious. Then if you're in the back office, for example, the same thing applies. You want to be super cautious. I know with one recent one, it looked a lot like a broker. The website was very close, but it asked them to re-enter their credentials, and they don't usually re-enter the credentials. So be super cautious. Does this feel right? Does this look normal? If you typically save your credentials and it does a pass through. Also, if you are a driver, like I said, try to utilize your hotspot. Also, keep up with your patching. Make sure you have the most up to date. Then on the back office, try to segment your network and isolate it. You want to try to get it as secure as possible. And so, it's just like what most companies do. They'll isolate or they'll segment off that network that the public uses versus the non-public.
Before we dive into segmentation, I do have a question. I'd heard some companies would pay, I think it's white hat companies, to try and hack them to detect vulnerabilities. So if I'm a CEO, should I try to hack myself first and then catch the deficiencies and train? Or should I hack myself, train some more? Is there ever an instance where that may work? Because I always feel like some folks, they just kind of fat finger it, they go through the motions, and then next thing you know, all it takes is one person to get a breach.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that. I'm a big believer in pen testing. And so, that's one of the things we do here, which is part of the cybersecurity government team, also offers free pen testing, but there are also companies will do pen testing. And that comes in and does vulnerability testing, penetration testing, and it'll help you find a lot of your vulnerabilities. And then it'll also recommend things like two-factor authentication, rather than, hey, come try to hack my network. I'm a big believer in penetration testing. And then also, there are a lot of companies out there that just offer best practices as far as cybersecurity training. And I think that's just good hygiene, is to constantly offer that, making sure people don't click on the links. There's also software out there. You can do all the training that you want, but somebody is going to click on something that they shouldn't. And so, having software that checks the attachments, that checks the hyperlinks to make sure that they're secure, is always also a good idea.
And looking at segmentation of a network, I think this is fascinating because I came from a large trucking company where you had multiple, like you had your warehouses, your servers, you had your company intranet, you had these different setups here. But then for the smaller companies, it's like I have a Google email and an Excel spreadsheet. Is there any difference in terms of segmentation between the large ones and the small ones?
Yeah, there is. I think with the large companies, they're going to segment a lot different than the small ones. I think the small ones are going to segment almost like you do at home. At home you segment your network, but you may segment it not physically but virtually. Where the large companies, the segmentation is going to be more physical. There's a lot of different ways to segment a network, but again, the depth in which you segment it is going to be different. The physical segmentation with the firewalls and the routers, that's what the bigger company is going to be. But if you're a smaller company, you may have a different virtual Wi-Fi for the public and the drivers than what you have for your back office staff. You may have a different authentication method. You may have something different for the maintenance, because anything that the trucks connect to, you really don't want the back office to connect to, which may be different than what you have the drivers connect to. And so, any of those, even the things that you buy, that are smaller trucking companies would utilize, most of that will allow for segmentation. And so one of the deliverables that we're working on is things like that. So I think that's a great question. We're working on, the best practices, and the best practices for a owner operator are going to be different than a SMB company of up to 10 versus a small company up to 50 versus an enterprise. So that's one of the things we're working on is the best practices. And, we are addressing segmentation because it is different for each size company.
That's what I think some have thought about before, is you want to make sure for like folks who aren't as familiar, segmentation is the best way of saying, well, maybe I only want my drivers to access up to this point. And then if I want to deal with a truck itself, maybe only a login for maintenance. And then if someone has a login over all the different ones, I need to make sure there's a list of people who can cross pollinate these silos. That way, if I do have a hack in one area, I guess it's like mitigating it, kind of like having different pastures to make sure you don't jump a fence. If that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a recent hack within the last few months, and I know I talked to the CIO of the company, and it was a bad hack, but it could have been a lot worse. And I asked him, I said, well, how did you isolate it? And it was network segmentation, and he said it impacted about 15%, but they got to basically a certain point and they couldn't go any further because they could only get to about 15% because they had segmented the network.
Wow, that's pretty wild. And that's not that having that kind of ability, layers and layers of defense, building your network. One of the things you mentioned earlier was the ports. You have an upcoming webinar talking about it. I feel like maybe ports are very susceptible because if I'm looking at trying to take something, I want to know what's in the box, and I need to see where it's at the stack. There's a lot of stuff. Tell us a little bit about what's going in this upcoming webinar.
Yeah, the upcoming webinars get to do with Chinese cranes, and so it didn't get a lot of press, but there was something that came out a few months ago. I think it was in March, about the Chinese cranes and how a lot of them are on our ports, and that they were made, that they were priced a lot cheaper than things that were not made in China. And here to find out that it's not because the parts were cheaper, but they had some subsidies to it. And what was found out is a lot of information, including pictures that were taken, locations and information, was being sent, back to China. And so what the webinar talks about is what information was being sent, and nothing's been done with that information. And so what could be done with that information? What risk does that pose? And so, we've read a lot about information that's being sent back to other countries. And it never seems like a big deal to us because we haven't seen anything happen. But that's something I think we have to be aware of, because it's always a threat. We always have to worry about, someone collecting data, but yet not doing anything with it. There's also a Microsoft breach where a lot of data was being sent to a foreign country, Again, nothing happened with it yet, but they were collecting the data. So the webinar really focuses on, how it happened, why it happened, and the possibility of what could happen with that data.
I would be very worried if it found out how quick I can unload things. Maybe even the longshoremen would be worried as well. I'd hate for China to say they could unload a few boxes faster. They're actually skipping you out on some income. You got another event coming up here while we have a little bit of time left. This one is the Cybersecurity Conference in the fall. Let's get a little preview on that, because if folks missed the webinar or they want to get more Connect Network, tell us about this conference coming up.
Yeah, we've got a cybersecurity conference in the fall that we're really excited about. It's in Cleveland, and it's coming up. It starts on October 27th. The main event starts on the 28th, and we'll go through Tuesday, October the 29th. And what's different about this event, I think, versus some other events, is we really focused on having people from the industry come in and speak. Obviously we have experts that can talk about technology, but we really wanted people to hear from experts in the industry. And so we've got, to kick it off, of course, we do have some governmental agencies. So to kick it off, we do have somebody from the White House, National Cybersecurity. But then we've got a panel where we're just going to talk about trends and predictions for 2025. So I've got myself and then some members of the team with CISA, but it was important to have a carrier on there. And so we've got the CIO from XPO, Piyush Patel, that is on there. And then we also talk about some university experience or things that we're focused on. And that's kind of our give back, that we are creating a test tool called the Ultimate Truck Hacking Platform. So we'll talk about that. We also did a white paper on maintenance software. So we talked about maintaining or segmenting that network. And so one of our researchers that we work with, Jamie Lightfoot, she'll be talking about maintenance software. And so one of the important things is to have a takeaway from this conference. It's not just to learn, but actually have things that you take away. And so she'll be talking about, hey, here's some things you should take away from this. So that's a session. We've got CISA that talks about the tools. So we talked about the pen testing. One of the big security issues that we've been talking about is APIs and AI. So we'll be talking about that. We get a lot of questions about insurance. So we do insurance. And then, the next day we talk to, we've got a fireside chat with Warner, the CIO at Warner. And we talk about, what do you see the future of cybersecurity? What are the things that keep you up at night? And then we've got tabletop exercise. I think, that the tabletop exercises are great because those are things where you do some real world scenarios, and we're focused on business continuity. I think everybody, it's the old Mike Tyson thing. Everybody's got to play until they get hit in the mouth. And I think with cybersecurity, that's kind of the hit in the mouth. And so the business continuity plan is we're going to actually sit and write down a business continuity plan. And then we talk about a research project that we're actually going to present on, called a seed key issue. And that was a webinar that talks about how the telematics devices and the ECU communicate. And then we finish it up with probably, not to be biased, the thing I'm most excited about. And it's a fireside chat about recent hacks, lessons learned, and really the new reality. And so that's something that I'm hosting with Todd Florence from Estes, who's the CIO, along with Ward Trucking, the CIO at Ward Trucking,
Yeah.
or Vice President of Technology at Ward Trucking, Eric Voss at DAT, and myself.
That's going to be a good talk. So we got running out of time, but if folks want to sign up for this event, get tickets, learn more, best way to find out.
Go to NMFTA.org and you'll get a pop-up to sign up, and we'd love to see you there.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time, Joe. Check them out, nmfta.org. See the pop-up, get the tickets, give them a go. That's it for this episode of Loaded and Rolling, but join us next week. We'll do it live.